After leaving the hospital, U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert says his brutal knife attack last week will only strengthen ties between Seoul and Washington. Korea's finance ministry says the current economic recovery momentum is too weak, with the government pledging to front-load spending in the first half of this year. And Apple enters the smartwatch fray with its new line of high-end wearable devices, which will launch in select markets next month. Primetime News begins now. Well, welcome to the program. You're watching Primetime News live from Seoul. I'm Sean Lim.
And I'm Kang Chery. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We begin with the latest on the injured U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert. Earlier this afternoon, he was released from the hospital after being treated for knife attack wounds.
And despite last week's assault, he told reporters that the Seoul-Washington alliance remains firm. Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
Scarred but with a huge smile on his face, Ambassador Lippert thanked the South Korean public for their support following last week's brutal knife attack. Speaking to reporters before leaving the hospital on Tuesday, the U.S. envoy said in Korean that the incident will only strengthen ties between Seoul and Washington.
Beyond 뇌에 땅이 굳어진다.
Ambassador Lippert, who was attacked by a man wielding a knife at a breakfast meeting in central Seoul last week, needed 80 stitches on his right cheek and left arm. The stitches on his face have been removed, but doctors will be visiting his home every day to check on his arm until he is fully recovered. All things considered, the envoy says he feels pretty darn good.
I mean, it was obviously a scary incident, but I'm walking, talking, holding my baby, hugging my wife. So I just feel really good.
But he did hint at a possible change in the security procedures, as many blamed lax security for his injuries. At the time of the attack, the ambassador only had one full-time South Korean bodyguard with him.
But obviously, as people and the State Department in Washington have said, we're going to take a hard look at our techniques, procedures here, and I'll leave it to the security experts to come up with recommendations and policies going forward.
The ambassador, with a mix of Korean words, asked the South Korean public to treat him as they had done before the incident, as the guy next door and Sejun's dad.
I will still be a 동네 아저씨 and Sejuni Appa, as people here in Korea have called me.
Despite the appalling incident, Ambassador Lippert said that he wants to return to the job as soon as possible to advance the alliance between their two countries, adding that there will be no changes to their economic, political, and military cooperation. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
A top UN official on North Korean human rights issue has called for more concerted international efforts to raise awareness about Pyongyang's crimes against humanity. He says North Korea's past abduction of foreign nationals should be addressed. Arirang's Kana Kim has more.
A senior human rights investigator at the United Nations is calling for concerted international pressure to get North Korea to address its kidnapping of hundreds of foreign nationals. In a report released on Monday, Marzuki Darusman, the UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in North Korea, said countries should come together to bring back surviving abductees and shed light on all abduction cases. The strategy laid out in the report calls for efforts to refer the North Korean leadership to the International Criminal Court and a global approach to improve North Korea's dire human rights situation, with the goal of bringing a close to all enforced disappearances by Pyongyang. North Korea's systematic abductions of foreign nationals gained the spotlight with the publication of a UN Commission of Inquiry report last year that said Pyongyang had engaged in abduction as a matter of state policy. The report says North Korean agents have abducted hundreds of foreign nationals, mainly from South Korea, Japan, and China since the 1960s. Adding to the urgency, Darusman said Japanese authorities are investigating 881 possible abduction cases believed to have been carried out by Pyongyang. Japanese authorities have already identified 12 other abductees. Drusman's report will be presented to the Human Rights Council in Geneva next week. Last week, North Korean Foreign Minister Lee Soo-yong, speaking at a UN Human Rights Council meeting, flatly rejected the landmark UN report released last year, calling it politically motivated. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
South Korea is planning to impose some kind of sanctions on the companies that comply with North Korea's recent unilateral wage hike at the inter-Korean factory complex in Kaesong. Seoul's Unification Ministry official told reporters on this Tuesday that the government plans to outline the possible legal and administrative steps that firms could face if they give out raised wage payments in March. This follows Pyongyang's decision to up the monthly wage of the North Korean workers at the complex by 5% to $74. Seoul has called for talks on this matter, but the call has so far gone unanswered by the North.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel, on a visit to Japan, urged the country to address its wartime past and reiterated the importance of reconciliation with neighboring countries. The move comes as Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe faces mounting pressure from the international community for a wartime apology. Kim Ji-yeon reports on the growing momentum.
During the second day of her two-day visit to Japan, German Chancellor Angela Merkel reportedly advised Japan to properly address the issue of the forced sexual enslavement of Asian women during World War II. Japan-based Kyodo News reports that Merkel emphasized the importance of reconciliation between Japan and Korea during her meeting with the leader of Japan's opposition Democratic Party, Kazuya Okada. Merkel added that it's important to face the problems of the past in response to Okada's concerns about a lack of reconciliation with Japan's neighboring countries, mainly Korea and China. A day before, she had urged Japan to face its wartime atrocities, referring to Germany's reconciliatory efforts after World War II. Merkel's latest remarks have been seen as a call for change and the lukewarm attitude currently taken by the administration of Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe toward acknowledging Japan's wartime atrocities. And she's not the only one pressuring Japan to offer an apology. Korea's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Do Kang-il said on Tuesday that the country expects Japan to build trust with its neighbors by making courageous efforts to face up to its history, just as Germany did after World War II. Also, U.S. Representative Mike Honda has said that Abe should not be allowed to appear before the U.S. Congress without repenting for the country's wartime history. In February, Abe had conveyed his wish to address Congress, and if he does, he will become the first Japanese prime minister to do so. Prime Minister Abe is set to issue a statement in August to mark the 70th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II, but there's speculation that he'll try to water down Japan's wartime atrocities. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Upon Merkel's visit to Tokyo, a German newspaper slammed Japan for trying to whitewash its past aggressions in Asia. The centrist daily Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung said Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's attempts to water down Tokyo's past apologies are stifling Japan's economic recovery. It notes the impasse is serving as a block to trade with the world's largest export market, China. It also noted that the Abe administration's behavior serves to bring Korea and China closer together.
It was a big day for tech enthusiasts and journalists alike in San Francisco as Apple has unveiled its latest wearable gadget, the Apple Watch, a starting price at $349. Our Chi Myung-gil has more.
It's been 5 years since Apple launched the iPad, and now the company is making a major play for the wearables market with this Apple Watch. The watch comes in 3 different models: the Apple Watch, the Apple Watch Sport, and the high-end Apple Watch Edition. The watch has many integrated features such as the Apple Pay mobile wallet, messaging, calls, health tracking applications, and the ability to connect your watch to a friend's watch. Pre-orders for the watch start April 10th and it will go on sale on April 24th. It will first be available in the US, Australia, China, and Japan, among other countries.
The Apple Watch is the most advanced timepiece ever created.
Apple enters a market already crowded by major tech companies, ranging from Korea's Samsung and LG to China's Huawei and startups such as Pebble. And with the smartwatch market expected to take off this year with projected sales of 28 million units from last year's 4.6 million, mobile manufacturers are pouring their efforts into making their smartwatches better and more visually appealing. Samsung, which had attempted to steal Apple's thunder with the release of its Galaxy Gear in 2013, is planning to release a new smartwatch during the first half of the year. LG surprised many with its Urbane smartwatch, which has the ability to make and receive phone calls without the need for a connected smartphone. Apple requires a connection to an iPhone to be fully operational. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Korea's finance ministry says the country's recovery momentum is not strong enough, pointing to a need for more stimulus measures. Now, with the government pledging to pour money into the economy in the first half of this year, all eyes are on whether the central bank will cut its key rate. Our Hwang Jie has the details.
Korea's major economic indicators were all down this year. Output, consumption, and exports all plunged, while consumer prices would also have marked a drop if it were not for a tobacco price hike. The finance ministry is expressing concerns, saying the country's recovery momentum is still weak. It adds that lingering uncertainties abroad, like a weak Japanese yen and a possible rate hike by the U.S. Federal Reserve, also pose a threat to the domestic economy. To prop up growth, the government has announced a $9 billion stimulus package for the first half of this year and called on the corporate sector to raise their wage levels, which will in turn boost domestic demand. Given the efforts made by the government, market expectations are mounting for the central bank to cut its key rate in the coming months.
There's a high possibility that the Bank of Korea will cut the rate in April as it revises down its growth outlook for the Korean economy.
The Bank of Korea will set its key rate for this month on Thursday. Attention is now focused on the central bank's next move, as the prospect of another rate cut also prompts concerns about the country's snowballing household debt. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Korean bank branches have closed in record numbers as customers increase their use of mobile and online banking. The Bank of Korea says the number of bank branches fell to the lowest level in 5 years last year to 7,433 branches. That's around 270 branches fewer than the previous year. In comparison, the number of people who have signed up for smartphone banking last year surpassed 4,800, which is up 30% from the previous year. Greece is set to hold technical talks with its creditors in Brussels on Wednesday on its €240 billion bailout program. Eurozone finance ministers are treating the matter with urgency to find a long-term solution to Athens' debt problems. Shin Se-min reports on the necessary reforms needed to make that happen.
European finance ministers are impatient, saying there is no time to lose. The troubled Greece is quickly running out of funds and must repay its IMF loan installment by the end of the month. Europe's finance ministers have criticized Greece for wasting time. Chairing a meeting with Eurozone finance ministers on Monday, Dutch Finance Minister Jeroen Dijsselbloem said technical talks on further funding for Greece would start on Wednesday. The Eurogroup chairman says Eurozone member nations are ready to support Greece if it continues on the economic reform path.
The talks have to start rather today than tomorrow, and we shouldn't waste so much time. The extension is only for 4 months, and the time is ticking away.
The Eurozone agreed last month to extend Greece's bailout program until June, and it is hoping to approve a detailed list of reforms by next month. So far, Athens has only outlined its proposals in broad terms, describing 7 reforms it wants to launch. The proposal will be soon discussed with the 3 institutions dubbed the Troika: the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the IMF. In the meantime, the ECB began its €1 trillion quantitative easing program on Monday as Europe's national central banks began picking up the debts of their own governments. The euro fell to its lowest level against the U.S. dollar in 11.5 years on Monday, ending a $1.08.5, spurring talks of euro-dollar parity. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The threat of radical extremists has prompted the Arab League to call for a united force to combat the Islamic State group.
With more, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, we've heard similar calls to action by Egypt's leader. What would be the focus of this proposed coalition?
Well, this combined force among Arab nations would battle the spread of IS militants across Iraq and Syria, as well as other radicalized splinter groups. The League has stressed the need for such a coalition was urgent to the regional security. This as IS is reportedly undergoing internal discord amid its rapid expansion. Arirang's Park Ji-won has more.
The Arab League urged its member countries to create a unified air force to counter the growing threats from extremists in the region, including the Islamic State group. The remarks came during a two-day Arab League foreign ministers meeting that started Monday in Cairo.
There is an urgent need for the creation of a multi-purpose common Arab military force able to intervene rapidly to fight terrorism and the activities of terrorist groups.
The creation of the force will top the agenda of the Arab League's two-day annual summit set to take place in Egypt later this month from the 28th to the 29th. In the absence of a unified force, several Arab League countries, including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Jordan, have participated in U.S.-led airstrikes against Islamic State in Syria. Egypt also carried out its own airstrikes on Islamic State targets in Libya after the militant group beheaded 21 Egyptian Coptic Christians last month. Meanwhile, the Islamic State group is reportedly undergoing internal strife in maintaining its unity and ideology amid its rapid expansion. The Wall Street Journal reported, citing interviews with Islamic State defectors, that resentments are piling up among both the Syrian and foreign fighters inside the notorious extremist group, and the number of defections has increased in recent months. Local members are discontent with the higher salaries and lodging given to foreign fighters, while some foreign fighters voiced opposition to the brutal treatment of civilians, prisoners, and members. Dozens of foreign members who refused to fight or who were caught fleeing from battlefields have been reportedly been executed over the past few months. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And shifting to Argentina, a deadly helicopter crash has claimed the lives of 10 people, including 8 French nationals. They include three-time Olympic medalist and world-class swimmer Camille Muffat, who won gold at the 2012 London Games. She was only 25. There was also Olympic boxer Alexis Vatin, who was 28 years old. Veteran sailor Florence Actud was also killed in the crash. She was best known for being one of the first women to make a name for herself in the world of sailing. Argentine authorities say the accident occurred on Monday near the Andes Mountains when 2 helicopters collided amid good weather. The aircraft were said to be carrying media crews filming a reality TV show. An investigation is underway to determine the cause of the disaster. And turning to China's economy, official figures show producer prices are continuing their 3-year-long decline, raising fears of damaging deflation. On Tuesday, the National Bureau of Statistics released data showing the country's producer price index dropping by a record 4.8% in February compared to a year earlier. Analysts are attributing the decline to slowing external and internal demand, as well as overproduction in the industrial sector. Last week, China's leaders set this year's economic growth target at about 7%, representing the weakest level in 25 years. Though the central bank has cut interest rates twice in recent months, some expect Beijing will need to provide further support to keep deflation at bay. And finally, an experimental plane is attempting to fly around the world, all without a single drop of fuel. According to Mission Control, the Solar Impulse 2 is now entering Indian airspace after taking off from its second leg from Oman on Tuesday. The wings of the plane, which span across a Boeing 747, are equipped with 17,000 solar cells, but altogether it weighs at 2.5 tons, or about your average car. 2 Swiss pilots will be at the helm during the record-breaking trip. which seeks to prove the future of flying is possible without fossil fuels.
We want to show that climate change is a fantastic opportunity to bring on the market new clean technologies that save energy, save natural resources of our planet, make profit, create jobs, and sustain growth.
The full mission is expected to be completed over the next 5 months at an average speed of 50 to 100 kilometers per hour. One of the biggest challenges will be a non-stop 8,500-kilometer stretch from Nanjing, China, across the Pacific to Hawaii, which is expected to take 5 days and nights. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello everyone, I'm Stephen Che with the Sports Brief. Starting with baseball, the KBO League canceled its preseason games on Tuesday thanks to a blast of cold that swept the nation. The top office started with the cancellation of the Tucson Nexon game in Mokdong due to a sudden bout of strong wind and below freezing temperatures. It kicked off a domino effect, which eventually saw all 5 preseason games called off for the first time ever. The KBO will not reschedule the lost games this preseason, which runs through March 22nd. Over to the KBL for Game 2 of the series between the LG Sakers and Goyang Orions. The visitors flew out the gate, but the Sakers came back to lead by 1 at the half. And going to the final period, the Orions, led by Troy Gillenwater, pounded the paint and punished the Sakers' mistakes. With the Orions' victory, the series heads to Goyang, tied 1-1. Over to pro volleyball in the V-League. We start with the women in Seoul. The Hyundai ENC Hill State beat the GS Caltex Kicks in 4 sets. It tied them up with IBK at 53 points, but placed them down a spot because of 1 less win. Their final matches will determine second place and home court in the postseason. And to the men, the KEPCO Vic Storm crushed the Uricard Hansa in straight sets behind Mitar Zurich. With that, KEPCO won all 6 meetings against Uricard this season. Finally, to the FA Cup, defending champions Arsenal beat rival powerhouse Manchester United to reach the Cup semis. Nacho Monreal scored the opening goal for Arsenal, but Wayne Rooney equalized minutes later to the delight of the Old Trafford faithful. Then 15 minutes into the second half, Danny Welbeck scored what proved to be the winning goal. Man U couldn't recover, especially after Angel Di Maria was tossed for a double booking red card. Arsenal are set to face either Reading or Bradford City in the next round. And that's all I have for now. Your weather's up next. Good night.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with the Weather Outlook. It was another brisk cold winter day under mostly clear skies, but make sure to bundle up when heading outdoors as wind chills are making it feel about 6 degrees colder than the actual readings. Air quality remains at the very dry range in most regions, and the humidity index here in the capital is down at 34%. As for tomorrow, a mix of snow and showers are in store for the Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, and Jeollanam-do provinces. Otherwise, cold air will stick around through Thursday morning, and conditions should jump back up to seasonal averages over the weekend. On to tomorrow's readings. The daytime high here in the capital hits 7. Cities down south reach the low teens. Meanwhile, Daejeon and Jeju top out at 8, Dokdo 4, Mount Kumgang -7. That's all I have for you now, and I'll be back with more in just about 2 hours.
cold.
You sure do.
Now that's primetime news for this Tuesday. I am Kang Chery. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Sean Lim. Have a great night. We'll see you soon.